What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. Lots to get to, Copa America and the Euros. So I'm not going to spend any of this time really breaking down specific games. I want to look at the bigger picture and focus on the takeaways from this weekend, from some of the notable teams that exited, some of the notable teams that advanced, and really kind of put them in conversation with each other because there are some themes that should be addressed here. So let's start with Brazil. I said heading into this tournament, Brazil were my favorites, despite everything that I told you it was Argentina, that I firmly believed Brazil had the best squad in this tournament, and that this was really important for Brazil to reclaim their spot atop CONMEBOL, because Argentina had won the last Copa America. Obviously, Argentina won the World Cup. Argentina looks like one of the 2-3 best teams in the world. Brazil have not been on that level, and qualifying is not going well either. This was the opportunity to change the narrative. From the very beginning of the tournament, that hasn't happened outside of one good performance. And obviously, exiting in the quarterfinals doesn't help that either. Now, it was a penalty shootout. I will always go to bat and say, who knows what happens if you win that penalty shootout. Maybe they win the whole thing. But based on the performances, you can't be confident in that. And finishing second in your group does not help. They got punished the way they should have by having to face Uruguay, the best team from the opposing group. Vinicius gets himself suspended. And so now you have a very, very losable quarterfinal that goes to penalties, and ultimately you come up on the wrong side of that. There's nothing about the Uruguay game in particular that was horrific or terrifying or anything like that. It was the tournament as a whole and the position Brazil put themselves in, having to play Uruguay, knowing that Uruguay is in really good form, things are clicking, and that's just not an opponent you should be playing as Brazil in the quarterfinals of Copa America. There was nothing about this tournament that made you feel any different about qualifying. It looked and felt the same, that this is a continuation of their struggles. So I say all that to say, at least most of them, of course, fans, media, probably going to take it too far, but a lot of the criticism being hurled at Brazil and the questions and the frustrations are 100% valid. This has not been good enough. This is Brazil we're talking about, and they are just not particularly scary right now. And this was the opportunity to change that and to get back on track, and it did not happen. Throughout the tournament, there aren't all that many positive things you can point to take away from this, outside of just the fact that objectively losing in the quarterfinals is a massive failure, of course. But it's also about the performances and the way that they got to that quarterfinal and then lost it. So I'm not here trying to paint a rosy picture, trying to find the bright side of what's happening to Brazil. I would like to compare this to Portugal, though, as Portugal exit the Euros. Portugal have one knockout stage win in a major tournament. 2018 World Cup, Euro 2022, Euro 2020 played in 2021, 2022 World Cup, Euro 2024, since winning Euro 2016. And I literally mean knockout stage win as in you beat the opponent. Because obviously they got one this time, but it came on penalties. I don't count that. That was a draw. Then they won the penalty shootout. So if you take away shootouts, they have one knockout stage win. That win came with Ronaldo on the bench. More on that later. Let's compare that to Brazil. One trophy for winning a Copa America. a second Copa America final appearance in a very hard fought game that they lost to Argentina. No shame there. And they have reached at least the quarterfinals in every major tournament they have played since the summer of 2016. So basically, right, 2018 onward. Portugal have not gotten past the quarterfinals of a tournament. 2018 onward. Brazil's worst finish is Portugal's best. Now, yes, you could say, okay, Copa America, it's easier to get through, easier to get to the quarterfinals, get to the semis, easier to win. All that's true. But does that make up for this discrepancy? And also, don't talk about Portugal losing on penalties, please. Because Brazil lost in the World Cup on penalties, and Brazil just lost in Copa America on penalties, too. Portugal don't have that excuse. And then the second part of this is that it seems like, and I don't have a good answer either, nobody can really pinpoint what is wrong with Brazil right now. You hear things like players need to have, more effort, more energy, more pride, whatever words you want to use, kind of generic things suggesting that the players haven't been good enough because they haven't. But it's not like there are these head-scratching things going on or that you're seeing a problem and are unable to solve it. And maybe I'm just not as familiar with this Brazil team. Admittedly, I don't watch them all the time outside of major tournaments. Obviously, know the players. Maybe there is something I'm missing there. I will acknowledge that's a possibility. But it just more feels like it's not working. You look at the Portugal side of this, and this has been my massive frustration and why I'm so hard on this Portugal team and the Portugal managers. First of all, I still firmly believe that squad is as good as any in the world. I can make an argument that is the best collection of players participating in a major tournament this summer. You can have different opinions and maybe disagree, but they're in that conversation. Again, they have not made the semis of a tournament since 2016. But basically, this group of players has not made the semis of a tournament. And they didn't look good in 2016 either. They just found a way to do it. And by the way, final, obviously, Ronaldo goes off injured. And so I said coming into these Euros, when I did my favorites, I had them third. Not because I thought they were the third best team in the tournament, but because I had way more faith in England and France than I did Portugal. We're going to get to those two teams next. Why? Because we've seen this story over and over again, that they don't live up to their potential, that they don't get the job done. And you saw it from the very first game. Oh, they're going to stick with Ronaldo. This is what it's going to be. I'm not particularly scared of them. I don't see how they win this tournament. That was the conversation I was having with a friend of mine. Don't, immediately, I'm out. Don't need to see anything else. This is who they are again. Because you've seen this playbook and this story before. And Roberto Martinez needed to go in and change something. To do something different. We're in the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results territory here. Did it necessarily have to be dropping Ronaldo? Maybe not. And I 100% would have picked Ronaldo to be on this team. But to put Ronaldo out there and to continue to pander to him, to build an attack around him, when you have this ridiculous level of talent on your bench, when it has not been working in previous tournaments, in this tournament, when Ronaldo puts up significant XG numbers and can't put the ball in the back of the net, which is the one thing supposedly he can still do. And I say supposedly because goal scoring is goal scoring. But at some point that has to translate at the highest level. It's one thing to do it in Saudi Arabia. It's one thing to do it against bad teams in qualifying. But as soon as they played good teams, he can't score. And it's not because he didn't create chances. And you can say, well, yeah, it's because of his movement and his ability to find open space. That's fine. That's true. Are you telling me that whatever combination, Diogo Jota, Gonzalo Ramos, whoever, João Felix, whoever you want to pull off that bench, can't also capitalize from the fact that you have Bruno, or not Bruno Guimaraes, Vitinha and Bruno Fernandes behind you, that you have Rafael Leao on the wing causing problems. It's not like Ronaldo is the only person who can score goals for this team. And when did they look their best in this tournament? When the substitutions were made and they brought in different attackers. And when did they look the best at the last World Cup? The game when Ronaldo got dropped. And then, yes, I know he didn't start the next one and they lost to Morocco. They scored 6 goals with him on the bench, though. That has to mean something. Because we have not seen them be successful with him as the starting striker. I don't know how many tournaments you have to watch to know that that's not going to work. And maybe it's not about Ronaldo in particular. Maybe you could have just changed the approach and not built it around him as much because he's just not your best player anymore. To me, that is just a fact. And so I say all of this to say, if Brazil is in catastrophe, in crisis here, and that's not an unreasonable thing to say considering what has happened over the past couple of years, what are you using to describe Portugal, who have not been a factor in terms of actually being a contender to win a major tournament with this entire group of players? At least some of these Brazilian players, and this is a younger Brazil team, they obviously have not had as much success. But they were close to a World Cup semis. They have won a trophy fairly recently. And again, this is not me trying to go to bat for Brazil. To me, there have to be so many more questions asked about Portugal. And about the continued decisions of managers to keep trying to do something that is not working and to keep bending to Ronaldo's will. And it's much easier for me, I will acknowledge it, it's much easier for me to sit here and say, you got to drop him. Stop letting him control everything, because I'm not the one that has to deal with the consequences of that. It's not just the Ronaldo part. It's about what are your other options. And time after time, those other options show you they're more effective. And it still hasn't actually gotten anything to change. So, Brazil, Portugal, I just wanted to put those two in conversation and wrap up the Ronaldo conversation as part of that, because this is one of those things that I just get really, really frustrated by, and I don't let go of easily, because these are the kind of things that to me seem more fixable. There is something is not working. You can clearly change something and see if that gets you a different result. If it didn't, and you go back to Ronaldo, then fine. There's nothing I can say about that. But the refusal to even try, and the few times when it did happen, to see positive results and then not continue doing it, is immensely frustrating. And to me, it's why Portugal is sitting at home alongside Brazil in a tournament that, as I wrote after I think it was the second game, and gonna go to France and England next. This is the final thing I'll say on Portugal. This tournament is wide open. I am not scared of the 4 teams left. I'm just not. Outside of maybe Spain. Spain is the one team that has a right to say, okay, they scare you a little bit. But if you're Portugal, you're looking at this thing as wide open. And instead, they are sitting at home because they refuse to do something to actually try and maximize this talent because they clearly weren't getting enough out of it and didn't do anything about it. I wrote after game 2, their greatest obstacle, the toughest challenge, is themselves. It's Ronaldo's behavior. It's Martinez's refusal to drop him and seeming to not come into this tournament with a clear plan of what he wanted to do. It's all of that. It's not just Ronaldo. But I really feel like they beat themselves more than anybody beat them. And that, to me, is just the most infuriating place to be. To leave all of that on the table, and now you're at home watching teams that, outside of Spain, and maybe the Netherlands at times, have just not looked good in this tournament. So, speaking of France and England, real quick here. I'm going to kind of revisit something I talked about last time and add a little bit more nuance to it, because I'm not sure I did a great enough job kind of explaining my whole philosophy here. What France and England are doing, and the way that they play, which is frustrating, underwhelming, cautious, pragmatic, that is the correct strategy in knockout tournaments full of chaos. It just is. There is so much evidence to back this up. It's why Argentina are back making a run at another Copa America. It's why they won the last World Cup. It's why France, outside of the one penalty shootout loss, consistently get to the business end of tournaments. It's why England consistently get to the semifinals. When you are one of the best teams in the world with the most world-class attacking talent, or just world-class talent in general, that can bail you out if you need a goal, that can at least, can decide a game in a moment, can get you to a penalty shootout. The best way is to make somebody beat you over 90 minutes. Then you have the cushion of a penalty shootout if it takes that much. To be pragmatic and to be defensive-minded is just the right strategy. It's not pretty, it's not fun, but it works. It can get you, most of the time, to at least the quarters and probably the semifinals, I would argue. The difference comes, or I should say more specifically, it can win you 2 games, maybe 3. 2 or 3 games in the knockout stage. The question is that 4th one. It is the difference between getting to the semis, getting to the final, and actually lifting the trophy. That is where you need your attack to show up, and you need to fix all of these problems that you have if you're France or England. So let's take some recent examples. France. 4 goals in the World Cup final. Consistently scored goals in the knockout stage of 2018. Argentina averaged 2.5 goals in the knockout stage of the 2022 World Cup. Right? Had to score 3 to even get to a penalty shootout because once they started scoring, Mbappe woke up and France started scoring. France were able to flip the switch and get themselves back into the game. That is the kind of stuff you have to be able to do. Now, the team that won a major tournament on the European side in between those 2 World Cups is Italy. And I hear everybody saying, okay, so here's a great example of a team that didn't do that. Italy still scored multiple goals in the round of 16 and the quarterfinals of Euro 2020. That's all it takes. It might just be 1 game. You might just have to score 2 goals once. And by scoring 2 goals once, I mean in 90 minutes, not after extra time. But to continue to bail yourself out at the end of games, if you're England, to continue to win shootouts and find ways to score goals that is not you actually putting the ball in the net from open play, if you're France, that only takes you so far. Yes, it can get you through 2 rounds. It can probably get you through 3. This is my big criticism with Southgate. It's not the overall style of play. It is that we have not seen this team be able to turn it on and turn it off when they need to, and to flip the switch and go score goals in the 1 game that you need to in order to win the tournament. The jump from 4 to 6 when it comes to the NCAA tournament, from 2 to 4 when it comes to the knockout stage of soccer tournaments, is that big hurdle that if you are not multidimensional, if you can't win multiple ways, it is so, so difficult. It's not impossible, but it is incredibly difficult to go all the way and actually win that final. So you can look at this two ways here. You're Spain. Okay, you're round of 16. You scored a bunch of goals. Tough game against Germany. Weren't spectacular, in terms of scoring goals. So maybe you feel like you put in two good performances already. You put in at least one in terms of goal scoring. So you probably only need one more. Maybe Germany counts as two, and so you might be able to, get a 1-0 off a lucky goal or a penalty or something, and then win a shootout to go through the final and win it. Because you've already earned at least, quote unquote, earned at least one win. At some point, England and France are going to have something not go their way. England's not going to have Jude Bellingham pull out a ridiculous goal to save their tournament in the round of 16. France aren't going to win a penalty shootout. Or somebody's going to score 2 goals and their attack is going to continue to be lifeless, unless that changes. It could wait until the final. But I think France is the perfect example of this, which is where I'm going to end. We don't think of these France teams as particularly impressive or exciting to watch. You could argue they're disappointing based on the amount of talent that's out there, that they don't generate more excitement and don't generate more goals. But when they need to score, World Cup finals in particular, they do it. It's not always pretty when they get there, but in that game, and it just kind of happened to twice be the World Cup final, where they need to score a bunch of goals, and they've had 2 of these against Argentina too. When they need to score the goals, they find a way to do it. And Argentina, when they play France, when they need a way to score the goals, they find a way to do it. It doesn't have to be pretty every game. It doesn't have to be pretty most of the time. But this is my question, because France, we know France have it in them. Maybe they don't do it this tournament because they have not typically looked quite this bad. But Deschamps has done this enough times. He understands this. His team has kind of perfected it. It's why they always end up in these finals. This is the question for England. But unless something changes for one of them, to me, they are the 3rd and 4th most likely teams to win this tournament. Spain's 1, Netherlands are 2. Because you've seen them generate attack. You've seen them score goals. But again, all it takes is one game. This can change instantly. If all of a sudden England wake up and score a couple goals in the semifinal, now you're in one game, you just have to survive the final, get to a penalty shootout, whatever. That is what I am looking for in these semifinals. So that kind of serves as my semifinal preview. That was a lot. Going to stop it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Enjoy both the Copa America and Euro semifinals. And I will see you next time.